Chapter 1. Mozambique. How Shanghai and I had been talking for days over Apache's cell phone connection to the farmland he owned in a remote part of south-central Mozambique, where he made his new home. He had come to Maputo, the capital city, to load up on supplies and to pick me up for the long ride back to his plantation. How was barking into his cell phone when his white, chauffeur-driven, late-model Toyota pickup pulled up in front of my hotel. It was clear that he was in a hurry and that he was angry. There was a brisk handshake, followed by a lot more shouting in salty Chinese as he struggled to make himself understood to a countryman whom I could grasp he wanted to buy goods from. China is a big fucking mess with all of its fucking dialects, the shaven-headed, stocky Hao in his late 50s said as he hung up. As I stood there with my bags already sweating in the mid-morning heat, Hao's frustration caused him to train abuse on John, his tall and sinewy Mozambican driver, who had been coolly smoking a cigarette while he rearranged the supplies loaded onto the Toyota's flatbed. "You, cabeza no bom, motherfucker," he said, the curse word coming in Chinese, as the grizzled immigrant farmer angrily employed 3 languages in one short and brutal sentence. Having overheard me speaking Spanish to communicate with the driver and assuming it to be Portuguese, he pleaded with me to help him translate. "Could you please explain to this motherfucker where we need to go? We've got to get out of here. We need to be on the road." A generation or two earlier, the ugly American had been one of the sturdiest stock characters on the world stage. He was a figure who contented himself with shouting louder whenever he was not understood by the natives in whatever corner of the world he found himself. After just a few minutes with Hao, I felt I had met his Chinese successor. Over the last 10 years, official China has invested hugely in Africa, yanking it away, as many commentators would have it, from the centuries-long controlling grip of the West, while few in that part of the world were paying attention. The foundation for this thrust actually lay somewhat further in the past. The most definitive commencement date was perhaps the state visit to the 6 African countries by the then head of state, Jiang Zemin, in 1996. In a speech at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Jiang proposed the creation of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC. This turned out to be an important first move in a momentous 2-step. Upon his return to China, Jiang gave another speech in the city of Tangshan, in which he explicitly directed the country's firms to go out, meaning go overseas in search of business. No Chinese leader had ever said anything like that before, and from the very start, Africa was clearly a principal target. 6 years later, I was working in China when Jiang's forum convened triumphantly for the first time, gathering 53 African leaders in Beijing. Among China's many pledges, Jiang promised to double development assistance to the continent, create a $5 billion African Development Fund, cancel outstanding debt, build a new African Union headquarters in Ethiopia, create 3 to 5 trade and cooperation zones around the continent, build 30 hospitals and 100 rural schools, and train 15,000 African professionals. By 2013, there was no escaping the notion that Beijing's project on the continent had become far advanced. Because of China's lack of openness, hard data on the country's overseas activities has always been difficult to come by, and nowhere more so than in Africa, whose governments tend, themselves, not to be good at offering up comprehensive or reliable data. But according to Fitch Ratings, China's Export-Import Bank extended $62.7 billion in loans to African countries between 2001 and 2010, or $12.5 billion more than the World Bank. A research group called Aid Data at the College of William and Mary estimated China's total commitments during roughly the same period at $74.11 billion and put the value of its completed projects at $48.61 billion. But people like Hao were evidence of something else happening altogether, an even larger-scale phenomenon, one that seemed to be escaping control of the best-laid state plan.